You know, this is for us the first time we are having some content after the launch on Tuesday, on a third day. Is that third day, right? And we were a little bit reluctant to do it or not, but we had so much content that we just didn't want to lose any opportunities. So we were building the agenda until we really needed to prolong Tuesday, and not, well, we can try to prolong maybe whole day, not only conference part. And I'm so thankful to see so many of you joining us still here. While we were having our prep, we commented that whoever is going to be in this room for sure is interested in AI. So I'm so happy and blessed to have great people in the room. Damir, you are cross, but I will, since you're sitting here, I will introduce you first. And you're the youngest, Damir Kopljar, Cross AI. I don't need to introduce Sanjin, but I think your talk really helped us to fill the room, so thank you, and once more round of applause for... I keep turning back because I'm never sure of your last name, so Vid Stojevic, who will have the first part of the panel. He will explain what he's doing because I'm unable to say that, but for me, for my courage, and for Vid, please, one round of applause. And Sean Neary, both of them flying, both Sean and Vid came from London only for this panel, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the invite.
We will introduce them. Okay, so when we talk about AI, I think we all know that there were some, like, the curve of how often people are talking about AI is going like this, I think, in time, especially in the last 4 months, 5 months already. So I would just like, if you can help me, if you can raise your hand, if you are super excited about everything that's been happening in the last couple of months. Okay, now if you, no, please keep it. So you have you're not excited, Dennis.
Well, I've never heard any questions.
Yes. If you are excited about everything that's okay. And you have another hand. Now, please lift another one. If you're a little bit afraid of either missing out something, or what's going to happen with AI, or if, I don't know, if somebody else is going to use, okay. So, I kind of think that we are in a very specific moment. So we are all thrilled, and at the same time, we are not sure what's going to happen and how we will deal with that. So I don't know if this state is bearable for a longer time, but I surely hope that after this talk, we will be able to understand a little bit, at least this hand that represents some sort of fears. So, and one more thing before I start with the questions. So my other, I don't know, dilemma is everything with AI coming slow or too fast? So mostly everybody wanted to brag about their Mid-Journey or DALL-E skills, so I needed to do it as well. But I firstly asked ChatGPT to help me out with different languages. So I tried to find idioms in different languages for svatko svoga AI konja hvali, jel te? And I don't know if there is really saying blowing your own Mid-Journey trumpet or something like that. And there are one in Swedish and German. So this puppy was born when we were celebrating first year of CrossDach. And this picture is pretty ugly. So I asked at that day at Mid-Journey to try to guess how the puppy will look like when we will have QED. And where is it? And this is what Mid-Journey said. Nice, right? And this is how the puppy looks today.
We're safe.
Did I? Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so getting now back, are we late or not? So we are hearing great stories about AI for decades, I would say. And we kind of all have this hope or promise that it might help us in a different segment. And I think each of us is mostly interested how it's going to affect our lives. So Vid, can you now please explain what does your startup do?
Yes. I guess the reason why you're asking me is that it's different to kind of, I'm kind of an outlier a little bit. So basically we're working on, we're an early stage startup, we're working on designing drugs, designing sort of small molecules that can target diseases. And that kind of a little bit more specifically, what that means is we have target proteins. These are proteins that are associated with the disease. And sort of the challenge that involves AI is to design small molecules that can fit a pocket on this target. And we're kind of even more specifically focusing on enzyme targets. And I guess I can add one more thing and kind of to try and answer the question is how AI fits into this story. So we actually simulate the enzyme in order to understand where these pockets are that need to be targeted. So the startup is really not driven by AI, it's driven by simulations. And that's, I think, an important point because AI alone is often not really sufficient to just solve all your problems. And AI really kind of, once you have that pocket, then you can use AI and generative models and so on to try and identify the best candidates and optimize for drug-like properties and these kinds of things.
So to give us some kind of hope, is the thing you're doing and the other people in pharma and medicine, are your drugs going to be better than my Mid-Journey experiment? Or can we hope that we will really be able to live longer, healthier, and fight the diseases like cancer in the future? In that light, or this is too much?
I think that's a big question, but I think that the answer is probably yes, but the timelines are quite long, I think.
Okay.
But the way that this is going to happen really is that, so the AI is already helping, right? I think it's helping to design drugs, it's helping to do things that medicinal chemists or people in pharma find difficult or not intuitive, or they wouldn't have guessed it, they wouldn't have done the same thing without the AI. But these improvements are usually quite incremental, so it's quite close that you can debate whether a chemist could have done it or not. But I think where the really big wins are, if you kind of think about the space of druggable targets, and people often refer to this as kind of drugging the genome. So only a very small fraction of all available enzymes or proteins have been drugged, and there's no reason. Kind of the reason is that they're simply not accessible to technologies that are available today. So I think that the transformative part of that is going to be the simulation, sort of understanding what's going on, and that part can be also supported by AI, and then AI itself to kind of be able to target those pockets where humans fail, really.
What I really loved during our preparation is how when you talked about AI, it was like it's almost, it has been here for a while. We have been using it, we already see it. We even needed to maybe go back for sometimes. It's very similar what Kelsey said. We maybe already have a lot of technology, we're just not using it right. So Sean, you said, yeah, we are using it for, I don't know who from you said, traditional AI. So how come we came to the moment where we can already say almost legacy AI? When that happened?
In the last 4 months, when consultancy firms like Bain come out and then do this sort of thing. No, I'm joking. But it's always been there. But it's always been there. So AI has been used, and I think the good thing is actually when you put your position up on the board, you called it advanced analytics, right? Because we're not at AI level, the true AI level, right? Terminator. But you use AI because that's what everyone can understand. But advanced analytics, utilizing aspects and foundations of what AI is, ML is the one that you then default to. It's been used forever. What hasn't happened is it hasn't been used commercially because it's not been a viable product that's used with an ROI that's available to introduce it. But I'd say 17, 20 years ago, we had the neural nets then come in with the black boxes using scoring models, got introduced. It was cheap. Vendors were able to do it. Although it was on hardware, it was very heavy. What's happening is now we're going into more this digitalization, cloud computing. We're able to speed this up at a faster rate of efficiency, better ROI. So it's becoming productionized and readily available in the commercial environment faster than we used to. Again, they've been looking at all these advanced stuff, but it's hidden. It's in the back end
Can you
science.
just provide us with a couple of real examples how you've been using mentioned technologies?
Yeah, fraud, that's the area that I specialise in. Everyone knows it as fraud. So you've had the black box scoring model for fraud. But it's been unexplainable, and actually it's really hard to run without putting a very heavy infrastructure behind it, so it's quite limited. So you can't really do much. You can't iterate or put a better cadence in improving it. It's like a 2-year project, 3-year project to then do it. Over the last 10 years, that has shortened that time frame. The cost to run it has, which means I can then put more developers on it. But I think what's been missing is actually the skill set was not readily available to utilize these effectively. You had standard analytical folk who could write rules and standard sort of rule sets, is it plus this minus that, and the score equals X. I saw a shift around about 6 years ago where data science became the role to have in fraud, no longer just in credit risk. And as that's become more readily available, these traditional analytics people are now working in tandem with data scientists to help you with that cadence and speed up. So now fraud, we can do more retrains. And with the infrastructure that is easier and faster, and technology, it means that I can do automated retrains, not manual retrains with maturation. I can broaden my data set. Bigger data has become available, more sort of demographic data versus financial data. So we've had this explosion of big data, plus then cloud computing has created a perfect storm to then push us forward. So that's sort of what we've seen in fraud. And then you go into the operational side, automation's there, and that's where more generative AI will actually really help, is actually that front-end customer side of things in the future, which is the big next step. I don't see that helping in the fraud detection space.
I really love this perfect storm as a potential label for what's happening currently. And you mentioned data, and you mentioned explainability, and we talked about potential inhibitors to put AI more in use currently at this moment, when we are finally maybe being aware of how much biases and ownership over data is but is important. How do you, Damir, see it in the market? How much are clients, so you work with different clients, even in different countries. Are there huge differences? Are people now really being focused on the stuff, on those terms I've mentioned, or?
Yep, I think the explainability part, and also I think we touched it on today's session, that I mean, here in Europe, we maybe talk much more about the regulation, privacy, like bias, explainability. But also I think that this term is coming to be, a hype or, buzzword that everybody's talking. And again, if we, connect it to the first talk that we had, why we are doing it, like Kelsey was saying, I think it's the same with the explainability. So explainability as well is, not new.
Can you maybe explain explainability? I'm sure that there are some people who would really love that somebody just says like 2 sentences, what is explainability?
Yeah, there's a lot.
And I kind of think you can do it. Right?
Yeah, of course. So it's easy. Some people. No, explainability has like you can look at it on a certain level. So one is like global explainability. So you want to really explain the whole like model. So the key, features, how they are, interacting on the total data set, but you can also explain every single decision. So for example, if I'm giving a loan and I'm bank, so I can say the model, it's kind of the key variable is my salary, but then I can also explain, why you didn't got the loan or you got the loan. So those are the completely different things. And in order to solve this problem, so there are multiple ways how we can do it. So one way is that I say, okay, this is the key variable. The other one is I can tell you, what can you change in order to switch? So if your salary was, 10% more, then you would get it. Or you can get like also like counter, like examples, you're similar as that person who didn't got, so that is why. So these are the different techniques how you can kind of explain and help, because on this explainability, there's like this super good study they did on Harvard. So why explainability? So it's also in the medicine because this is one of the most important topics. So they first took one group of doctors without, just doctors doing their job with the knowledge they get from the university and through experience. And then also they gave them an AI model. So they have like AI model, but just the prediction. And then the third group like got the prediction, but also the explanation. And I mean, the results were, I think, logical that, with explanation, the doctors got much better result than just, just by prediction. But it was also scary because then they wanted to showcase that also if you're, just making an explanation, it can do hurt. Because what they did, so they made an explanation, but the explanation for, they switched. So give me an explanation so that, doctor for the different one. And then, doctors were still listening to it, so, which is not good thing. So this is importance of, really thinking deep about the explainability, but not just, creating explanation.
I would just like to remind you that we said no doomsday stuff. We will not talk about scary stuff. So it took us how? 15 minutes to come to the scary. Please, Sonia, help us
If
out.
I can add to this, I mean, like we've done this research like for many years, and something like 80% of AI projects failed 6 years ago. Last time we did a study 3 years ago, it was still 80%, right? So like 80% of them don't make it all the way to scale. That's how we define, and they fail. And when you look at the root causes, we found like 2 out of 5 times it's technical reasons. Like it was just too expensive to connect the data. Yeah, it worked in the proof of concept. When we connect it to real data, world is different and messy, it doesn't work. 3 out of 5 times, it's because people didn't want to adopt it. And explainability is a key thing there. You have to like get people to trust that it works before they can adopt it. But there's a whole bunch of other reasons that have to do with the adoption, why it doesn't get adopted. And I think a big problem that a lot of AI projects have is they don't even think about adoption until they have an MVP, where actually you need to start thinking about the adoption on day one. And if on day one you think this is going to be really hard for people to adopt, just don't pursue the project.
And coming back to explainability a little bit more. So one of the potential fears, one of the fears we all have, this is the second hand again, is biases. So we really want to avoid biases. Of course, there is maybe not that much hurt if it is fraud. Maybe you block a card, but not that much. But maybe more, or you will lose the client, right?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, we just communicated this very fast. But can you, Sanyan, explain sentence biases and how are you dealing?
Well, biases is just like,
Not like, don't start with Daniel Kahneman book and biases. Can you explain biases?
Well, I was thinking of starting with Shakespeare, actually, maybe Aristotle. I mean, the key problem with all machine learning is that, well, not all machine learning, traditional machine learning, is legacy machine learning, is that like you need ground truth, right? You need labeled data, and at some point you have to assume that the labeled data is a representation of reality. But actually, often it is not. It is really poorly labeled because a human used to make that decision, and a human made that decision with bias, and now the machine learning algorithm didn't learn how to make the right decision. It learned how to make the decision the way humans did. So if humans made the wrong decision, congratulations, machine learning is making the exact same wrong decision, except more efficiently and faster.
Yeah, wow. So how to avoid it?
It's really hard, right? Like at Bain, we actually like try to avoid doing work on the kind of things where there's a high risk of us propagating bias. But if you have to do it, you kind of have to look at the outcomes. You kind of have to you have to do the explainability and kind of go feature by feature, be like, wait, does this make any sense at all? So
getting back to explainability, like the most important stuff so far. And getting back to the experts and the guys who will then check if everything was right. You were talking about that earlier today. And you shared with us a great story of going, I would say, finally beyond, not just with the efficiency or something that we will now do in some sort of better way, but in a new way. And you were mentioning this story, how the experts, the chemists, were surprised with the results. So if you can share that.
Yeah, I think, so in what we do, these kind of problems with bias and also explainability are kind of manifest themselves differently. So I think the problems that we have are the bias manifests itself in that we want to move away from existing drugs, and the space for possible drugs is absolutely huge. So to solve that, sometimes we actually go to very primitive, to very old school models. I'll get to the answer to your question. Just in a
Okay,
second,
no,
but-
no worries.
So we go to very old school models, which are less biased because I don't know if there's an analog of that for text data or something like this, but it's we use genetic algorithms or things like this because they're based on fragments. So it's simply the combination of these fragments that gives you the possible drug, and it's got nothing to do with it. You don't really train it on a data set, on an existing data set. So to get started, to get this new idea, you have a combination of simulations and this kind of actually quite primitive AI, very old
You
type.
see, primitive, traditional, legacy, old stuff.
So that's, I guess, on the bias side. On the explainability side, I think it kind of ties in with the whole story, is that you have to, in some sense, we don't care about it because if the machine spits out something that works, it works, and the only problem that you have is how easily you can actually make the compound in the lab. But what you have to deal with there is kind of medicinal chemists who have their vast experience of what works and what doesn't work. So you kind of have the fight between AI and human experience, and that's kind of, I guess, where these kind of interesting examples happen is in that there are certainly in what I've done, we've had situations where the medicinal chemists will be very adamant, very sure that this will never work, but it does, and so in other words, they wouldn't have thought of this type of chemistry.
Yeah.
So even though it's incremental, it kind of does push beyond their boundary.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? Like, because as humans, we want hard and fast rules about how to do things, but there's so much nuance when we do this. The difference between fraud and this is in fraud, arguably there is the right answer, and you can check that the computer the machine got there. So actually, explainability is important. But in what you're doing, the right answer is not known by anybody. So actually, explainability is kind of less important because look, if you could explain how it got there, then actually kind of wouldn't be novel and it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So it has a different role to play. So you kind of have to be thoughtful about where does it apply and where does it not.
And we talked earlier about how it feels like a race today. We are racing the time. We are racing each other. Everything is going even faster and faster. Kresho was talking about it, checking his Twitter all the time, not because he's obsessive, but maybe he will miss something. And Sean, you said that it will stay like that, and there is no chance that there is a moment when we will be able to stop. How do you see that race in a corporative segment? It's
exactly that. So it's all about brand and reputation, and it's who has the best sexy product. We've gone to this whole digital age where everything has to look lovely. You look at what the neo-banking did to the old school banking. They're all using big back-end CRM systems and they're storing data in the same way. They just have a really sexy UI, which just gives you an extra feature, right? But they can brand that feature, but it's no different in the back end. So it's all the terminology that's using, and unfortunately we're creating new terminology, like we heard today, legacy AI, traditional AI. So a vendor will pick that up, and then they'll go to their marketing team, and they're right. We can say that all of our competitors are using legacy AI, traditional AI. We're using front of the market, next generation AI. They're doing the same thing. They're literally doing the same thing. But so unfortunately, and that's how the consumer is buying, because the explainability at the senior level, they're still learning what that is. They've never been in the weeds. They've not grown up to learn it. It's a technology that was forced upon them with buzzwords, and they say, oh, I want to use AI. I think we're talking about this in the prep. I want to use it. But do you really need it? Yeah, but everyone has it. I want to use it. And then that unfortunately, that's what we have. So these seniors want to say, yeah, I want to have it.
So glad you said that, because in 2017, a very senior engineer at Google, Martin Zinkovich, published this really famous paper. I think it was 98 Rules of Machine Learning. Rule number 1 for Google, and this was an internal guide to machine learning. Rule number 1, do not be afraid to launch a product without machine learning. If you can get it done with the rules, do it with the rules. But the second thing, there's this joke in Silicon Valley that you call it AI when you're fundraising and marketing.
Exactly.
You call it machine learning when you're hiring, and you call it a logistic regression when you're doing.
It's a great example, yeah.
So, what was next? Yeah, I remember now. So, based on this speed and race and stuff, this reminds me of yesterday we had a really impressive presentation by Enkelej Zotai, who was talking about launching or delivering stuff under high pressure of really special circumstances like war. And it is really it wouldn't be appropriate to even compare racing in this sense, but it obviously is putting us under pressure, and we are then going too fast. And even Enkeled said, slow down, right? Even he said, first think what you want to achieve, first think what you really want to do. And what would you say, Damir, about this shift left movement and focusing first on what we really would like to put into the market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, even the Kelsey, I think 50% of the, you know, these presentations started with this, really, you know, focusing on why, first identifying why we are doing it. So, as we said, like explainability, everybody's talking about it, but then, you know, really, you know, how to solve this problem. For example, we talked about the generative AI. So, I mean, is it okay just to make, I'm getting back to this loan example, you know, just should I give a loan or not, and then write me an explanation, and then if we don't understand, you know, what's in this black box, we just, you know, take the explanation and then we use it. No, of course, or we put this in chatbot. So no, but this is like new tool. We can still, I mean, because it's good for, you know, generating this human-like text. But if we have, you know, a model that we can kind of explain, like the features, as I said, on different levels, then we can use this new tool to make a human-like answer, but put the explanations that we know kind of that work. And this is, you know, making this probability that products will be used. And then we are, you know, connecting all the dots, and we are making sure that this really, you know, will be used, it makes sense, and it's creating business value. So obviously, you know, taking the tool and knowing why.
How is it in corporations? How do you find time to, you know, stop and think how you will use this traditional old stuff like AI?
You don't at certain levels, right? Was it 80% fail, I think
Yeah.
you're talking about? That's why they jump into it, I want to do it, I want to run it.
Yeah.
Don't think about the problem statement big enough to ask the question, what's the right technology? But there is an undercurrent that then does it. It's just gaining the funding and the understanding from the budget holders to why you should then utilize it. Why should I invest? Why do I have to change my hiring types and sort of personalities that I've got to hire? I'm going to data scientists. But they cost a fortune. Yeah, but they're going to pay you back forever, but it's intangible results. They're not really seeing it. Where does this hit my revenue? Specifically in my world. So you have them sometimes adopting fast, failing fast. Then it's just like, oh, we won't do that again. We wasted a fortune on that. Then 3 years later, they realise they should have done it, should have stuck with it. But if you have the foundational argument, like fraud did for a long, long time, do you want to hire 50 to 100 analytical people to write the perfect sets of rules, and I mean hundreds of rules with thousands of variables, maintain them on a week basis? Or can I actually do half and half and actually bring something in that can do half of that in a bigger depth due to all the signals you can identify automatically based on the technology, and then overlay with the guardrails, with the understanding to then get my business in? That's there, and that's a sound argument. But there are areas where that argument isn't there. But again, coming back to my point earlier, it's a sexy thing to be doing. So you see a mix of speed versus then rationale, and that depends on legacy to new. Legacy is we're now stabilized. We think more, we invest better. The new stuff, we try and do it and fail fast and waste money.
Yeah. So before I have a couple of hard questions, especially for you, Sanj. But are there any questions from the audience? Because there is 10 minutes, and maybe if we don't want to stay longer. So if there is something somebody wants to, yeah, yes, Batsy.
My question is, what are the? I mean, explainability is great, but what are the? And the reason why I didn't raise the hand, because the other hand with me was, you know, kind of prevailing. I'm already, you know, afraid of how fast things are going today. Okay. So what are the guardrails here? What are your thoughts on how easy it is to kind of, and you mentioned Enkeled yesterday, so we know these dark human nature also exists
and we are
happens.
now all aware of
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how, in your thoughts, how easy it is to flip the switch and use basically the same approach and the same technology to create something extremely bad?
Yes, that's I guess a doomsday question.
Yes, I didn't. He wasn't on our prep session.
No, I mean, it's very easy to just flip the switch. I mean, I'm kind of thinking specifically about what we're doing. We're designing small molecules. You just, instead of designing small molecules to target a disease state, you target enzymes that are crucial for the functioning of the body. I mean, I guess in this case, there are already lots of poisons out there. So you would, I guess, just be inventing better poisons. Maybe like the more sort of even the kind of the real doomsday scenario might be more linked to like designing viruses and things like that, which is
Which you are not doing,
which
right?
we're not doing. No, what we're
Okay,
doing is kind
thank
of simpler.
But it's
yeah.
more
Yeah.
efficient.
But whatever you will produce, and you said that you had successful proof of concept, you will need to go to the same clinical trials like any other. Is that going to be maybe the answer or something like that?
Yes, so that's part of the answer for sure. In that sense, yes. So nothing that we do changes the fact that you have to go through rigorous clinical trials and you have to have the molecules approved. I mean, so the technology can be used in negative ways as well as positive. But in what we do, kind of the impact is at the very beginning of the drug discovery process, and then it kind of diminishes as you go down the whole kind of pipeline of drug discovery and clinical trials and so on. And so regulation at that point is super important, but it won't prevent, I guess, rogue governments or whoever from,
Yes, just throwing something.
But on that point, you triggered a thought. Like you probably know, I used to. Like, what share of drugs actually pass clinical trials?
Yeah, very, very tiny. Depends how you measure it.
Less than
Yeah.
10%?
Yeah.
So, okay, you create a compound that you think has potential, but there's only like 1 in 10 or 1 in 100 chance that it works, right? And I think synthesizing it is expensive, right? So knowing the knowledge versus the synthesizing, so long as synthesis is expensive, I guess we're somewhat protected.
Yeah, you're protected against sort of it's not easily accessible to everybody. I mean, I guess it's a very complicated question, I think, but also, what we're doing is kind of using AI, using technologies to synthesize as little as possible to kind of cut costs. That's part of what the impact is to cut costs when it comes to synthesis and testing. There is, of course, a lot of effort that kind of links up the lab work with the AI, which is, I think, very, very interesting, where you can kind of use active learning approaches together with generative approaches to maximally sort of help with the types of problems you're describing. Say there's nothing that I can see that's going to flip, but it's always a dangerous thing, it's going to sort of flip the switch from one day to the next.
Okay, one more question maybe before the hard ones? It cannot be harder than this one, so whatever I do next. So we have time for that one that I said I will poke you.
My favorite number is 42.
Good one. No, we were talking about one more thing, and we need to connect the dots and sustainability that we have been mentioning so much. And we cannot deny the fact that we might be just leaving too fat, thick CO2 footprint with all of this, playing with my mid-journey, playing and stuff like that.
I mean, I'll acknowledge, I have been like Mr. GPT positivity all day long, but at Bain, like, we are maintaining, like, here's the signposts of like GPT winter coming, and here's what would need to happen for that to be true. And there's like, I don't know, 5 or 10 points in there. I'm not going to go through all of them. 2 of the biggest ones is, one, somebody uses technology to create like a nuclear accident type thing, probably like a deepfake of some kind. And all of a sudden, as a society, everybody decides like, all right, this technology is not safe, you're out. The second one is that actually we do not figure out how to make it more efficient, because like the compute for each token, it's like astounding amount of compute and hence CO2 that gets plugged out there. And like, that will need to get solved in 1 or 2 ways. Either one, we're going to find more efficient architecture that requires less compute, or B, we're going to figure out how smaller models can make just as good of a prediction as the bigger models. And if one of those 2 things don't happen, like at some point, the CO2 impact is like, you won't be able to like have the world adopt GPT because it's just going to be too much CO2.
Okay, and for the end, just one more thing. I haven't prepared you for that. So what would be your like either lucky guess or wish or whatever, so we can remember that in a year if that happened? Like we said that last year, if somebody said on this conference traditional AI, it would be like, what? So is there something, you can say personally, I don't know, I want Cross AI to have like 100 people.
No. So what's the prediction? Like what
Either
will happen?
prediction or wish or whatever you will be happy to remember in a year.
No, I think when we were sitting, because I was not prepared for this question, because when we
And
were sitting,
haven't asked anybody.
we were so happy that kind of, I think 2-3 years ago, I mean, even though AI was still, or machine learning was still here and people were kind of using it, it was not that, you know, everybody in the room and like half of the AI is here. I still hope that it will not come the winter or this doomsday, that we will still continue to talk about successful cases or all the new use cases that we today didn't think of. So I really, that's my hope that on next QED we will have
It
like
will be more
20
commercial
more.
or
Any
human,
like 20 new
important.
positive, 20 new positives.
That's a nice wish. Simon?
I mean, I said a second ago, I don't do predictions past 3 months, so I'm not going to
Okay.
make a prediction.
You can make a wish. You know, that's
I
the game. Wish or
wish
prediction.
that we learn that actually deploying LLMs is easier than deploying traditional AI, and as a result, they actually remove a lot of busy work from our lives, and our lives are focused on like solving bigger, more important problems, and as a result, we like are leading more satisfying lives because we're not doing like data entry.
You haven't heard yet, or you heard Kelsey saying something similar, that if AI helps us with stuff like that, we will be able to so.
That GitHub study, nobody talks
Two
about
of you saying that, it gives us really hope that it might be.
That GitHub study that nobody believes, including me. One of the questions is like how do you feel about your job because of this? And actually, like 60% of people say that I actually like my job better because of this. So I'm hoping that that translates in all the fields where we deploy it.
Job satisfaction and life satisfaction as
Exactly.
a consequences. Vid, do you have wish for your startup or something like that?
Yeah,
We wish for your
I'm
startup.
kind of balancing I'm kind of balancing between egotistical wishes and like wishes for the world to be a better place. But I think, I think there's sort of a little bit of a, I don't know, like these AI hype cycles come and go, but there's a, at least in the life sciences, there's a sort of a little bit of a hype cycle building with this combination of technologies, right? Not just AI, but sort of simulations and AI and kind of the marriage of these two. And I think this will be big, and I hope that I'm right about it in a year. That would be good also for our startup.
Sean?
It's pretty difficult. I was going to default back to the 3 months, to be fair, because that's definitely what it is. Now, I think normalization of actual AI. So we use the words traditional, future gen. It's just expected in daily use now. It's sort of the same as it was sending an email. It should just be used. And the other thing is, for vendors not to adopt a bunch of jargon that's then going to confuse my CEO and put me into this weird POC world of trialing shitty systems that aren't going to work. It's going to waste my money. So I wish for vendors not to utilize some of this jargon and just be true to what they're utilizing, and then actually normalization of AI in general.
I really love this normalization. Normalization is cool. Thanks, Sean. Thank you, guys. One more round of applause for everybody. Thanks.